Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're doing proposed minimum requirement for Silent Hill 2 Remaster, Reboot, Regret. Anyway, the proposed minimum requirement go as follow. i7 6700K or the Ryzen 5 3600, 16GB of memory, a GTX 1070 Ti or the Radeon RX 5700 or the ARC A750. I will keep the A750 for my ARC GPU video on Silent Hill. Then 50GB of available space, and we have a specific playing on minimum requirement should enable to play on low and medium quality settings at 1080p to get a stable 30 FPS. Welcome to Respawn PC, I'm Dunk, let's game on. We're going to start with the Intel side, so the i7 6700K I don't have in my possession, so I'm going to use the closest I have, which is the i7 4771, which is 2 years older than the 6700K, but both have 4-core 8 threads and a bit lower clock speed at 3.5 instead of 4 GHz for the 6700K. But you will see in the video that the highest CPU usage is about 50% for the 4771. So we can already debunk that the CPU is not really the real minimum requirement to play this game. Obviously 16GB of memory and the GTX 1070 Ti. We're going to play like they ask, so it will be 1080p. And for the settings, low, medium, I don't know what is low and what is medium, so I'll just use the preset low. And fair enough, with those settings we get an average of 58 FPS. This is well above the 30 FPS they claim, but I have nothing at medium settings. And just by reading the proposed minimum requirement, you already know that the GTX 1070 Ti is a lie about being the minimum requirement, because if you need to put low medium to reach 30 FPS, it's not the preset low, otherwise why you have the preset low? The GPU utilization go between 80s and high 90s of utilization. And for the VRAM, this card is 8GB of VRAM. We're using 5.5, so there's clearly some space with the settings that you can push at medium to get 30 FPS and use a bit more VRAM. The CPU, even if it's a lower clock speed and 2 years older than the 6700K, give us an average of 30 to 40% of utilization, sometimes reaching 50%. For the memory, 16 seems to be a bit high because using 6.8 to 7 GB of system memory, so maybe even 8GB is enough to play at the low settings. Now jumping to the AMD side, it will be the Ryzen 5 3600 with the RX 5700, obviously with 16GB again. We're going to play at 1080p with the lowest settings and nothing at medium. And this is where it gets interesting, as the RX 5700 is pegged at 100% and using 7.2 to 7.4 GB of VRAM. So the GPU is pegged, but we only get an average of 37 FPS, and I didn't even reach any intense scene. I'm just walking around in the city now. Not sure if it's because it's not well optimized for the AMD GPU, but the GTX 1070 Ti is getting better result than that, and the difference with the CPU is even worse. With the Ryzen 5 3600, we have an average of 12 to 20% of utilization. The CPU is doing even less than the i7 4771, so the CPU is clearly overkill. Maybe just a Ryzen 5 1600 or even Ryzen 3 should do the job. And for the RAM, the system memory, we're using 9.2 GB of system memory. So this is, the 16 is valid, I guess, unless you have a weird system with 12GB of memory. I can easily state that the Ryzen 5 3600, the i7 6700K are CPU way too high for this game to be considered as the minimum requirement. For the GPU, the GTX 1070 Ti seems to be a bit too high, and the RX 57 seems to be a bit okay. Probably when you reach a more intense scene, the GPU will drop at near the 30 FPS, but there's nothing at medium right now, so the low medium to reach 30 FPS, I doubt it. For the Intel ARC A750, we will wait for my next video on the Silent Hill 2, and I'll test every ARC GPU. Thanks to have come watching, and see you in the next one, and subscribe.